The new apartment was a symphony in beige, a sterile, echoing space that felt more like a hotel room than a home. It was the physical manifestation of my new life, a man untethered, a husband of 30 years suddenly single. My wife, Catherine, had decided our marriage was over, a quiet, bloodless departure that had left me feeling like a ghost in my own story. The divorce had been finalized 2 months ago, and I was still navigating the strange, disorienting landscape of solitude. The silence was the loudest thing in the apartment, a constant reminder of the shared laughter, the quiet conversations, and the simple, comfortable presence that was now gone forever. I was a man adrift, and I was not looking for a new harbor. I was just trying to learn how to float. A package arrived on my 58th birthday, a large, glossy box with a cheerful, brightly colored ribbon. It was from my daughter, Jessica. A wave of warmth, a rare and welcome emotion these days, washed over me. Jessica, with her boundless, often naive, optimism, was always trying to fix things. She had been worried about me, her phone calls a mixture of genuine concern and a slightly panicked impatience with my grief. I appreciated the gesture, whatever it was, a sign that I was not completely forgotten, a small light in the beige, lonely fog of my new reality. I placed the box on my new, too small dining table and opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of tissue paper, was a glossy brochure and 2 official-looking tickets. The brochure was for a 7-day lover's escape cruise to the Caribbean. The photos depicted laughing, silver-haired couples holding hands at sunset, dancing under the stars, and sharing romantic, candlelit dinners. The tickets were for a deluxe stateroom with a private balcony. They were for a couple. My heart, which had felt a flicker of warmth, was suddenly encased in a block of ice. It was a gift of exquisite, unintentional cruelty. The note tucked inside the brochure was written in Jessica's bubbly, confident script. "Dad," it read, "time to get back on the horse. Mom's already moved on, so it's time for you too. Life is for the living. We thought this would be the perfect way for you to find someone new and start your next adventure. Enjoy the sun. All our love, Jessica and Ben." Ben was her husband, my son-in-law. The flippant, cheerful tone, the casual dismissal of my 30-year marriage as something to be simply moved on from, was like salt in a raw, gaping wound. It was not a gift, it was an invalidation of my entire past. I sank onto a dining chair, the glossy brochure in my hands, feeling a cold, quiet anger that was somehow more profound than the grief itself. My daughter didn't see my pain. She saw a problem to be solved, a void to be filled. She was not honoring my past. She was trying to erase it, to push me into a future I did not want, a future that felt like a betrayal of the life I had shared with her mother. The cruise tickets were not an invitation to a new life. They were a command to forget the old one, and I would not obey. The cruise tickets sat on my kitchen counter for a week, a glossy, colorful rebuke to my state of mourning. Every time I looked at them, a fresh wave of resentment washed over me. But my daughter's thoughtless gift was not the only secret I was keeping. I was also the unwilling custodian of a much darker, more destructive truth, a secret that concerned my daughter's own, perfect, marriage. I had discovered it by accident a month earlier, a piece of knowledge so toxic it felt like a physical weight in my gut. I had been meeting an old friend for lunch at a quiet, out-of-the-way Italian restaurant downtown. As I waited for my table, I saw them. My son-in-law, Ben, was seated at a secluded corner table, not with a client, but with a young, blonde woman. Their heads were bent close together, their conversation intimate and quiet. And then, as I watched, frozen in the doorway, he reached across the table and took her hand. He stroked her knuckles with his thumb, a gesture of casual, familiar intimacy that was unmistakable. He leaned in and kissed her, a soft, lingering kiss that was not the kiss of a friend or a colleague. The discovery had thrown me into a state of moral paralysis. What was I supposed to do? To tell Jessica would be to shatter her world. She adored Ben. She saw him as her rock, the handsome, successful, and utterly devoted husband who was the centerpiece of her perfect life. To tell her that her rock was a liar, that her perfect marriage was a sham, would be to detonate a bomb in the heart of her happiness. It was a burden I was not sure I could, or should, make her bear. The hypocrisy of her trying to fix my life while her own was alive was a bitter, ever-present irony. I had confided in my oldest friend, Frank, a retired lawyer with a pragmatic and cautious mind. We sat in his study, the air smelling of old leather and whiskey, as I laid out the sordid story. Frank listened patiently, his expression grim. "This is a minefield, Arthur," he had said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "You have to understand, there is no good outcome here. You tell her, and you become the villain who destroyed her marriage. You say nothing, and you become a silent accomplice to her husband's deceit. The messenger always gets shot. Are you prepared for that?" His words had only deepened my sense of helplessness. I had chosen silence, an uncomfortable, complicit silence that made every family dinner, every cheerful phone call with my daughter, feel like a charade. I was a spectator to her husband's betrayal, a silent witness to a crime against her heart. And now, as I stared at the useless cruise tickets on my counter, the thoughtless gift from my oblivious daughter, a new, dark, and audacious idea began to form. The unwanted tickets and the unwanted secrets started to merge in my mind, creating the blueprint for a terrible, and perhaps perfect, form of justice. A few days later, I called my son-in-law, Ben. My voice was calm and friendly, belying the cold, calculated plan that was now firmly in place. I told him I wanted to take him to lunch, to thank him and Jessica for the birthday gift, and to clear the air about my own awkwardness in receiving it. He readily agreed, his voice full of the smooth, practiced charm that had so completely captivated my daughter. He saw me as a sad, lonely old man, a harmless figure of pity to be managed with a bit of patronizing kindness. He had no idea he was walking into a meticulously set trap. We met at a steakhouse, a masculine place of dark wood and leather booths, a place he would feel comfortable and in control. He played his part perfectly, expressing his concern for my well-being, apologizing on Jessica's behalf for her, sometimes clumsy, but well-meaning, attempts to help me. He spoke of his deep love for my daughter, of his commitment to our family. Listening to his performance, knowing what I knew, was a masterclass in self-control. I simply nodded, my expression one of weary gratitude, allowing him to believe he was successfully managing the situation. After we had ordered, I pulled the glossy cruise ticket portfolio from my briefcase and slid it across the table. "Ben," I said, my voice heavy with a feigned sadness, "I appreciate the thought behind this, I truly do. But I just can't. Not now, maybe not ever. But it's a magnificent trip, and I can't bear the thought of it going to waste. I want you to have it. Take Jessica. A surprise second honeymoon on me." His eyes lit up. A free, all-expenses-paid luxury cruise. The offer was too good to resist. His greed, I had calculated, would be stronger than any sense of caution. He made a show of protesting, of saying he couldn't possibly accept, but his objections were weak. He was hooked. He took the portfolio, his fingers tracing the embossed logo of the cruise line. "Arthur," he said, his voice full of a false, reverent gratitude, "I don't know what to say. This is incredibly generous." I let him have his moment, let him believe he had just secured the perfect romantic getaway. I had set the bait, and he had swallowed it whole. Now, it was time to set the hook. I leaned forward, my expression serious. "There is one small complication," I said, my voice dropping conspiratorially. "I tried to transfer the second ticket out of my name, but because of the package deal, it's non-transferable." The cruise line was very firm. I saw a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "But," I continued, "I found a solution. We'll simply add you to my reservation. You and Jessica will have your deluxe stateroom, of course. I'll just book a small, separate cabin for myself. Think of it as a family vacation. A chance for us to bond. It's the only way the tickets won't go to waste." The color drained from his face. Checkmate. I had just trapped a cheating husband on a 7-day romantic cruise with his father-in-law. That evening, just as I had predicted, my daughter called me, her voice ecstatic. Ben had, of course, presented the cruise as his own brilliant idea, a surprise he had orchestrated with her generous, lonely father. "Dad! I can't believe it! Ben told me! A Caribbean cruise, just the three of us! It's the most amazing, generous gift!" she gushed. Then, a note of her usual, practical confusion entered her voice. "But you're coming with us? On a lover's escape cruise? Isn't that a little weird?" Her cheerful blindness to the sinister undertones of the situation was almost breathtaking. I played my part, the one I had been rehearsing all afternoon. My voice was full of a carefully crafted, pathetic loneliness. "I just don't want to be alone, honey," I said, my voice cracking slightly for effect. "And after your mother, well, I just want to be around family. I want to see you and Ben happy. We'll have separate cabins, miles apart. We'll barely see each other. It'll be a real family vacation, a chance for us to make some new memories. Please, Jessica. It would mean the world to me." I was laying the guilt on thick, using her own pity for me as a tool to seal the trap. As I expected, she couldn't resist the appeal to her own sense of compassion. She was caught between her desire for the free luxury vacation and the undeniable strangeness of the situation. Her guilt and her greed were at war, and greed, as I had gambled, won. "Okay, Dad," she sighed, a note of resignation in her voice. "If it means that much to you, it will be fun." She was so focused on the prize, on the sun and the sea and the romance, that she was completely oblivious to the fact that she was now an unwitting pawn in a dark, psychological game. After I hung up, I immediately called my friend, Frank. I laid out the full, diabolical plan. He was silent for a long moment when I finished, and I could almost hear him shaking his head on the other end of the line. "Arthur, my friend," he finally said, his voice a mixture of horror and a grudging admiration. "This is a masterpiece of passive-aggressive revenge. You are going to be on a floating prison for 7 days with your daughter's cheating husband, who knows that you know his secret. What in God's name do you think is going to happen?" His question did not deter me. It solidified my resolve. "I don't know what's going to happen, Frank," I said, a cold certainty in my voice. "But for the first time since Catherine left, I feel like I am in control of something. This is no longer just about getting revenge on my daughter for a thoughtless gift. This is a test. I am going to watch him, every minute of every day. I am going to make him perform the role of the perfect, loving husband, under my constant, silent scrutiny. And I am going to see just how long it takes for him to break." The cruise ship was a colossal, floating city of forced merriment. The air was thick with the smell of salt, sunscreen, and buffet food. Calypso music played on a constant, cheerful loop from hidden speakers, a relentlessly upbeat soundtrack to the slow-motion psychological thriller that was about to unfold. From the moment we stepped on board, the dynamic was set. Jessica was radiant, her eyes sparkling with the excitement of a free vacation, completely oblivious to the suffocating tension that was a palpable, invisible barrier between her husband and her father. She saw a floating paradise. I saw a floating prison. Ben was a master of performance. I had to give him that. He played the part of the doting husband with a desperate, frantic energy. He was always touching Jessica, holding her hand, laughing a little too loudly at her jokes. But I could see the strain behind his eyes, the subtle tremor in his hand as he raised his piña colada for a toast. He was constantly aware of my presence, a quiet, watchful ghost at the edge of his perfect vacation. I didn't need to say a word. My silence was my weapon. I was a constant, physical reminder of the secret he was keeping, and there was no escape. The days unfolded in a surreal, sun-drenched nightmare for him. At the romantic, candlelit dinners for two that were a signature of the lover's escape package, I would be seated at a small table nearby, reading a book, my presence a quiet, unblinking indictment. When they took a salsa dancing class on the Lido deck, I was there, sitting in a lounge chair, watching. During a shore excursion to a secluded, romantic beach, I was under a nearby palm tree, a silent, solitary observer. I was his conscience, given a physical form, and I was inescapable. The close calls were exquisite torture. I would watch him receive a text message, see the flicker of panic in his eyes as he quickly angled the phone away from Jessica's view, only to look up and see me watching him from across the pool, my expression a complete blank. He started to make mistakes, his performance cracking under the strain. He would forget a story Jessica was telling, his mind clearly elsewhere. He grew jumpy, irritable, his charming facade beginning to crumble under the relentless, unspoken pressure of my constant, silent judgment. Jessica, in her blissful ignorance, was the only one having a good time. She saw her husband's irritability as stress from work, his distraction as him being tired. "He just needs to unwind," she would say to me in a conspiratorial whisper, never noticing the cold, hard look in my eyes. She was so convinced of the narrative of her own perfect marriage that she was completely blind to the evidence right in front of her. Her obliviousness was the final, crucial element of his torment, forcing him to maintain the lie in the face of the one person who knew the absolute truth. The breaking point came on the fifth night, under a sky full of brilliant, indifferent stars. We were on the private balcony of my small, single cabin, where I had invited him for a nightcap, an invitation he could not refuse without raising Jessica's suspicions. The sea was calm, the only sound the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull of the ship. He stood at the railing, his back to me, his knuckles white as he gripped the polished wood. The performance was over. He was a man at the end of his rope. "What do you want, Arthur?" he finally whispered, his voice a raw, ragged sound, stripped of all its usual charm. "I know you saw me that day at the restaurant. So what is this? What is this whole week of psychological torture? Do you want money? Is that it? Just name your price. I'll pay it. Just tell me what it will take to make this stop." He was trying to turn it into a transaction, a simple case of blackmail, a language he understood. He thought my silence had a price tag. I took a slow sip of my scotch and looked at his tense, rigid back. "Price?" I said, my voice quiet and cold. "There is no price, Ben. This was never about money. This was about you. It was about me wanting to spend a week getting to know the man my daughter married. I wanted to see, up close, if you were the devoted, loving husband you pretend to be." I let the words hang in the heavy, humid air. "This whole week was a test, Ben. A final exam. And you have failed, spectacularly." He turned to face me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a dawning understanding. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice trembling. I stood up and walked to the railing, standing beside him, looking out at the endless, black ocean. "I'm not going to do anything," I said. "You are. You are going to go back to your cabin, and you are going to tell my daughter the truth. You are going to tell her everything. About the woman at the restaurant, about the lies, about the man you really are. That is your only way out of this, Ben. The only choice you have left is whether the story of your marriage ending is told with your voice, or with mine. My personal growth, my journey from a passive, grieving victim to an active agent, had reached its final stage. This was no longer about a petty, spiteful revenge for a thoughtless gift. It had become something much more profound. It was about forcing accountability. It was about choosing a painful, devastating truth for my daughter over a comfortable, poisonous lie. I was giving her the one thing her husband never had, the truth. And in doing so, I was finally letting go of my own anger, replacing it with a cold, clear, and necessary sense of purpose. The explosion happened, as I knew it would, in the soundproofed confines of their deluxe stateroom. I don't know what was said, but the next morning at breakfast, Jessica was not there. Ben appeared, his face pale and haggard, his eyes red-rimmed and empty. He sat down, ordered a black coffee, and said nothing. The rest of the cruise was a silent, miserable affair. We docked 2 days later, and my daughter and her husband went their separate ways at the airport, a quiet, definitive end to their lover's escape. The fallout was immediate and messy. Jessica was, of course, devastated. And a large part of her anger and hurt was directed at me. She called me, her voice thick with tears and accusations. "How could you, Dad?" she sobbed. "How could you be so cruel? You didn't just expose him, you humiliated me. You trapped us on a boat and blew up my life. You did it for revenge, for that stupid cruise ticket." She was right, of course. My methods had been cruel, my motives born of my own pain and anger. I did not try to defend myself. I simply listened, and when she was done, I spoke the difficult truth. "I am sorry for the pain I caused you, Jessica," I said, my voice full of a sadness that was entirely genuine. "But I am not sorry that you know the truth. Your happiness was built on a lie. A beautiful, comfortable lie, but a lie nonetheless. I chose to give you a painful, ugly truth over that beautiful lie. Because the truth, however much it hurts, is the only thing that can ever truly set you free. And it is the only foundation upon which you can build a real, honest life." Months have passed. Jessica and Ben are divorced. Her relationship with me is strained, a fragile, tentative thing we are slowly, cautiously trying to rebuild. It is not what it was, and it may never be. It is now based on a brutal, painful honesty, the illusions of her perfect marriage and my passive grief both shattered. She is hurt, and she is healing, but she is no longer living a lie. She is stronger, sadder, and wiser. And in a strange, painful way, our relationship is more real than it has ever been. We are so often faced with impossible choices when it comes to the people we love. Do we protect them with a comfortable lie, or do we arm them with a painful truth? Is it our place to detonate a bomb in someone's life, even if we know their house is built on a foundation of deceit? Tell me your story in the comments below. Have you ever been the keeper of a secret that could destroy someone's happiness? What did you do? Your story is a powerful testament to the messy, complicated reality of family secrets. If this story made you think, subscribe, and share it with anyone who has ever had to choose between a beautiful lie and a terrible truth.